it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with this week's episode of the Rogue Roundup, where I give my picks for Standard, Modern, Legacy, Commander, and Pauper for cards that I think are going to go up. Starting off this week, let's take a look at Pauper, and my pick for this week is Armadillo Cloak, mainly due to the fact that the Bogles lists are on the rise in Pauper to combat the Delver list, especially the Black-Blue Delver, which has a lack of Edict effects in its 75. Typically, it's Edict effects that do keep Bogles in check in Pauper, but lately the black decks and other just removal is spot removal or geared towards beating the Delver and to go wide spreads of the tokens. So this leaves a big blind spot for decks like Bogles. Armadillo Cloak also has a lot of casual appeal. It sees play in Commander for Voltron decks, and the spread is actually quite interesting for this card. Typically, a 40-cent card does not have a decent spread, but you can actually buy list these for about 15 cents. So my target price would be 25 cents and expect that buy list to continue to increase as this deck continues to gain popularity. Once again, I don't think Pauper is the greatest format to invest in the moment, but I think that there will be a time in 2019 when Pauper will get the limelight and prices will go up in value. If Bogles is one of those decks, I think it did take down a major Pauper tournament not too long ago, and if it is in the spotlight, expect a card like Armadillo Cloak to have a double up or a triple up. Next up, we have Legacy. Legacy, I'm going to pick Cabal Therapy for two reasons. A, with the London Mulligan rule in effect, I think that a lot of greedy decks are doing quite well with the ability to mulligan, especially if you play a deck that doesn't really care about hand size. Cabal Therapy actually goes in two of those decks, Legacy Dredge and Legacy Reanimator, that just needs to have the right pieces in hand to take over the game. B, I think that cards that rip cards out of hands, especially against other greedy mulligan decks, are quite good right now, and Cabal Therapy does that as well. So this card is currently going for about $1.25, and the best buy list price is 75 cents, so the spread is pretty reasonable, and it hasn't been reprinted since Eternal Masters. Currently, the growth is pretty flat, but I'm expecting this to rise quite quickly with the London Mulligan shifting the meta towards decks like Dredge and Reanimator. Now, there are some rumors that Cabal Therapy will be printed in Modern Horizons. If that is the case, I think it's actually too powerful for Modern, but if that is the case, I don't expect the card to go down in value, but to go up in value because of just the sheer demand that will cause. For those reasons, I think this is a pretty safe pick at the 75-cent mark and expect to double up by the end of the year. Speaking of Modern, my third pick for this week is Unclaimed Territory. Humans had a total of 3 decks in the top 8 in London, and it seemed to be one of the better decks throughout the week. Unclaimed Territory is played as a 4 of in Modern Humans, and it's basically played in any tribal-based deck in Commander or in Modern. This is pretty much at its bottom and is very low right now because of Challenger Decks 2018. Challenger Decks 2018 stock is actually starting to dry up, and so is Ixalan stock. I don't expect a reprint in the Ixalan booster boxes. I think that they're done with the print wave of Ixalan. And these boxes actually are becoming more scarce as the days go by. So I think that Unclaimed Territory's low is right now at the $1.25. And the buy list spread is very, very aggressive. Currently it's going for $1.50 on the TC market price, but there are buy lists almost at the $1.25 mark. So I think that's where I'd pick it up and expect this card just to increase in value. People are worried about reprints in Commander sets or subsequent products going forward, but I really don't think this will put a dent in this card. What is going on with this card is it has a very high supply but a very high demand. So if you just don't even meet that high supply with a very significant reprint in the next few years, I think this card will continue to outstretch that supply and will increase in value. Moving on to Standard, I have a good one this week in the form of Growth Chamber Guardian. I like Growth Chamber Guardian for two reasons. Reason number one, it had an excellent showing in the Week 0 results on MTGO, posting 5-0 finishes in both Gruul Aggro and Gruul Walkers as a 4 of. So it's good enough for an aggressive deck, and it's also good enough as a roadblock for a Walkers deck. So this means it's probably the perfect card to go up in value post-rotation, especially with Merfolk Branchwalker rotating out of the format. Growth Chamber Guardian is basically a 1 for 4. If you can get this to stick, you can get 3 more copies with Growth Chamber Guardian. I have a hard time thinking that a card is going to replace this card in its slot, and if there is a better 2-drop that might fit in one of these decks. I think that this has a lot of versatility. It can go in a proliferate deck. It can also go in a go wide strategy like Celestia, and I just think it will have a home post-rotation. I really like cards that have hit their bottom, especially since this is out of a second set out of Ravnica Allegiance, which will no longer be open for competitive drafting. And the focus is definitely on War of the Spark. I haven't seen this much hype for a set since Dominaria, so I don't think that Ravnica Allegiance is going to put a lot of supply of Growth Chamber Guardian back in the mix. So this could be the Jadelight Ranger of the next format, with the card tripling up after rotation. Currently, the target price that I like to get on this is about $1. It's been flat, and its current price on the market is about $2. The buy lists are very, very low, meaning there's a lot of supply, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing. And with the rotation occurring and more sets coming out, there will be a lack of supply come rotation for this card to have that triple up. That leaves us this week with Commander. Commander, I'm going to pick one out of M19. I basically think that any of the cards out of M19 that see play in Modern or Commander at high levels are good picks, but I think this one's especially good because it's already starting to see movement, and this is Crucible of Worlds. Crucible of Worlds is currently going for about $16. The best buy list around $11, so I'd be aggressive in targeting this card at around the $12 mark. This card was a $40 card before the reprint. This card sees a ton of play in Commander. It also does occasionally see play in Legacy and Modern, and is just a casual favorite. It goes in decks like the Gitrog Monster or Lord Windgrace or Omnath the Locust Rage, any sort of land reanimation or any fetch lands, decks that use fetch lands or have lands that have sort of utility for sacrificing them. Crucible of Worlds is great in those decks. We even have cards like Blast Zone or Awakening Zone from this set that pair very well with Crucible of Worlds. The last few sets have given us cards that sacrifice, like the Memorials out of Dominaria and even Amonkhet. So this card just continues to get better and better and better with more cards in the mix. So I just think it's a matter of time before Modern really starts to adopt Crucible of Worlds in some sort of Lands Matters decks, and then a format going forward from the what we call Frontier 2.0 or Modern 2.0. When Wizards of the Coast does finally announce that, I think there will be a deck that will run Crucible of Worlds as the win condition with some of the deserts out of Amonkhet. So for those reasons, I think this is a very good card to park a lot of money in. I think that it's going to have a very aggressive growth even in the next few months. Core 2019 was dismally opened. I don't even think they did a second wave for this set. This is one of the very few sets that you could even find pre-release packs for months after the pre-release was over from distributor because it had such a dismal pre-release attendance. So those are very good indicators for a card that has the chance to go up. Like, this is a card, if it was printed out of Dominaria, out of War of the Spark, I wouldn't be as bullish on. I would not be surprised if it's a $25 or even $30 card within a year, and will definitely need a reprint to keep the price down. I hope you enjoyed this list of cards from this week's episode of the Rogue Roundup. Be sure to check back next week. Or if you're a fan of this type of financial content, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. What are your 5 cards you're going to be investing in? Be sure to check out my other channel over at roguedeckbuilder.com for our weekly Market Monday episode. Thanks for watching.